China's growing investment in Brazil's export system is now creating direct pressure on the United States economy. It is changing where the world's food supply moves, and the first impact is appearing in American agriculture. As China expands new export terminals and transport routes across Brazil, it is reducing its purchases of American soybeans, corn, and pork. For farmers in the United States, these cuts are not small adjustments. They weaken the stable demand that has supported American agriculture for years. American farmers have long depended on China as their most important buyer. When China increased its orders, prices strengthened and local incomes rose. When China pulled back, the entire system felt the strain. That same structure remains today, but China's strategy is shifting. Brazil is becoming a larger supplier as its ports and rail networks scale up with Chinese funding. This new capacity means China can buy more from Brazil at lower cost, and fewer shipments are coming from the United States. For American agriculture, this shift introduces new uncertainty that spreads quickly across the Midwest. When China reduces soybean demand even slightly, local prices in the Midwest can move within a single day, and that movement affects grain elevators, trucking routes, and farm income. This sensitivity is why China's growing investment in Brazil matters so much to the United States. The United States still produces enormous volumes of food, but the reliability of its export market is no longer guaranteed. So the real question becomes clear: why is China choosing Brazil as the country to expand its supply network? The answer begins with China's need for greater food security. China has a large population, limited farmland, and serious pressure on water resources. These constraints make it difficult for China to rely on domestic production alone, so it must secure stable suppliers abroad. For many years, the United States filled that role. American farms offered scale, consistency, and high-quality products. But every period of political tension created sudden shifts in trade, and each shift reminded China that depending heavily on one partner carried real risks. When the relationship became uncertain, China's access to American grain became uncertain as well. China responded by looking for a supplier with fewer vulnerabilities. Brazil offered exactly what China needed. It has vast farmland, abundant water, and one of the largest agricultural outputs in the world. Production is expanding, and the cost of growing and transporting goods is lower than in many developed countries. For China, Brazil is a stable and cost-efficient source of food. It provides scale without the same political sensitivity, and it gives China the long-term security it has been seeking in global agriculture. So the next question is clear. What kind of infrastructure is China building to support this expanding supply network? The answer begins in the port of Santos, where China is investing heavily to reshape how Brazil moves its agricultural goods. A new export terminal backed by COFCO is being built at a cost of $285 million, and it is designed to move far more grain than the port handles today. Once completed, this terminal will expand COFCO's export capacity from 4.5 million tons to 14 million tons each year, giving China direct access to one of the busiest agricultural gateways in the world. Brazil has already surpassed the United States as China's largest supplier of soybeans, and its total agricultural exports continue to grow as new infrastructure comes online. To support this growth, Chinese companies are also helping develop a large rail network across Brazil's farming regions. One of the most ambitious plans is a 3,000-mile railway linking central Brazil to the Pacific coast in Peru. If finished, it could shorten transport time to Asia by up to 10 days, reducing costs and strengthening China's control over the entire route. This is not simply an investment in ports and tracks. It is a strategy to manage the full chain of production, transport, and export, all in a region with rapidly expanding output. So the next point becomes clear. How will this growing infrastructure change the structure of American agriculture? The impact begins with price. As Brazil's transport network becomes faster and cheaper, its agricultural goods reach global markets at lower cost, and that creates pressure for American farmers. Brazil can move grain with fewer expenses, and cheaper logistics make its exports more competitive than those produced in the United States. American agriculture faces a different cost structure. Production requires higher wages, more expensive land, and greater transport distances. These factors raise the baseline price of American soybeans and corn, so when Brazil delivers the same products at lower cost, international buyers shift quickly. That shift lowers global prices for American crops, and farmers in the Midwest often feel the impact before they are able to adjust. Lower prices mean lower income for farms that depend on export revenue. When profits fall, the effects spread through local communities. A simple example shows how fast this happens. If trucking companies in the Midwest move fewer loads, the restaurants, repair shops, and equipment dealers that rely on them also see their revenue decline. This chain reaction is why the expansion of Brazil's logistics network matters so much for the United States. But the impact does not end with agriculture. These changes will eventually reach consumers across the country, affecting what they pay and what they find on store shelves. When China reduces its purchases of American crops, domestic prices can fall, and that may sound beneficial at first. Lower prices for corn and soybeans can ease costs for some producers, and local markets feel temporary relief as more of the harvest stays inside the country. With extra supply left in the domestic market, prices naturally move downward, especially for commodities that depend heavily on foreign buyers. But imported products follow a different logic. As Brazil strengthens its role in China's supply chain, the United States relies more on food items that travel long distances and pass through higher shipping, fuel, and handling costs. Those added costs can push prices upward for products tied to foreign supply, especially items made from processed ingredients that require multiple stages of transport. This creates a split in the market. Some prices fall while others rise, and consumers notice the shift through many small changes across everyday items. This is why these supply chain adjustments matter for households. They do not move all prices in one direction. They make the entire system less predictable. So the next question becomes more complicated. What is Brazil gaining in this process, and what might it be losing? The first benefit is clear. Brazil's agricultural exports continue to rise as China invests in new ports, terminals, and transport routes that move crops more efficiently to global markets. Record shipments of soybeans, corn, and sugar have strengthened Brazil's position as China's primary food supplier, and the country is earning more revenue than ever from raw material exports. But the risks beneath this growth are harder to ignore. As agriculture expands, Brazil's manufacturing sector has weakened, and the trend has accelerated in recent years. Factories that once produced machinery, electronics, or consumer goods have struggled to compete with cheaper imports, many of which come from China. This shift has pushed Brazil further toward an economy dominated by raw materials instead of diversified industries. A deeper reliance on commodities creates long-term challenges. When a country depends heavily on exporting crops and minerals, its economy becomes more sensitive to global price swings, weather shocks, and decisions made by foreign buyers. And as Brazil's links with China grow stronger, its economic structure becomes even more concentrated in a few sectors that feed China's demand. That concentration limits Brazil's ability to build a broader industrial base, and it makes future growth more dependent on external forces. So the next question moves beyond Brazil itself. What kind of global supply chain shift is China creating through its investment in Brazil? The answer points to a broader realignment that stretches far beyond one port or one railway. As China expands its agricultural and infrastructure footprint across South America, the global supply chain is slowly splitting into two distinct paths. One path centers on the United States, while the other forms around China and the countries that feed its demand. South America is moving closer to the China-oriented network. Brazil's growing export links, new terminals, and planned rail corridors are tying the region more tightly to Chinese buyers, Chinese financing, and Chinese logistics systems. This shift creates a supply chain where raw materials flow toward China with increasing reliability, while manufactured goods flow back into the region from Chinese factories. The United States is moving in the opposite direction. Policies like the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act aim to pull more production back inside U.S. borders and reduce reliance on foreign suppliers. But the challenge is significant. South America's lower land costs, cheaper labor, and expanding logistics capacity make it difficult for the United States to compete on price alone. Over the long term, these opposing strategies suggest a broader adjustment for the U.S. economy. Rebuilding domestic supply chains takes time, and it requires higher investment, higher wages, and more expensive infrastructure. As these efforts unfold, the United States may face a period where global competition shifts more quickly than domestic production can adapt. So the next question becomes unavoidable. What does all of this mean for American society today? The answer reaches far beyond Brazil's new terminals and China's expanding rail projects. These investments are reshaping the global flow of food, trade, and production in ways that directly affect the United States. What began as China's strategy to secure more stable suppliers has grown into a structural shift that touches American agriculture, supply chains, prices, and household budgets. For the United States, this marks the beginning of a new competitive environment. American farmers now operate in a market where Brazil can deliver the same crops at lower cost and at larger scale. American supply chains are being forced to adjust as key partners align more closely with China. And consumers feel the impact through a mix of falling domestic prices and rising import costs that make everyday spending harder to predict. These changes are not theoretical. They are unfolding now, and they point to an economy that must adapt to a faster and more divided global landscape. Communities that depend on agriculture will need to brace for more volatility. Households will need to prepare for shifting prices across many essential goods. And the broader U.S. economy will need to navigate a world where global competition accelerates, even as domestic rebuilding takes time. This trend is already shaping daily life across the country. It is happening in real time, and it will likely create even larger changes ahead. And those changes have already begun to appear in the way Americans work, spend, and manage their economic future.